Wow, you really weren't kidding about cracking the code of cat food. You provided like a treasure trove of YouTube videos for this deep dive. Cats, Jess Catacles, and even Dr. Lindsay Butzer, DVM by a B. You're clearly on a mission to become like your cat's personal nutritionist.
It is great to see that you're taking such a thorough approach with this. It is really easy to get lost in all the information out there, so diving into these expert sources is a really good first step.
I have to admit, one of the most fascinating things I came across was in that cats video. Did you know that cats basically domesticated themselves?
It's true. And it's unlike dogs who were bred for certain tasks. Cats just cleverly integrated themselves into human settlements, taking advantage of our, rodent problems. And that's actually a really important detail.
Okay, I'm intrigued. So, how does that little history lesson play into what we should be putting in their bowls today?
Well, it kind of speaks volumes about their dietary needs. Cats are obligate carnivores, and cats really emphasizes this. Different from some animals, their bodies just can't produce certain essential nutrients that you'd find in plant matter. They need meat. It's not a suggestion. It's hardwired into their biology.
Okay, so that makes the whole meat AAFCO guidelines advice from vets make a lot more sense now. It's like reassuring and all. But it sounds like we're really just scratching the surface here.
Exactly. AAFCO guidelines are a good starting point, for sure. They set minimum standards for essential nutrients. But to really thrive, cats need a diet that aligns with their, evolutionary history as these skilled hunters.
Speaking of things that I never even considered before, cats really opened my eyes to the importance of moisture content in cat food. I mean, I knew cats weren't big drinkers, but I had no idea it was such a big deal.
It's a way bigger deal than many people realize. Cats have a naturally low thirst drive, which is probably a leftover thing from their desert origins.
Mm.
Combine that with a diet of mostly dry food, and you have a recipe for chronic dehydration.
So dry kibble is basically like the opposite of what their bodies are designed for. It makes you wonder how we got here in the first place. But before we go down that rabbit hole, you mentioned chronic dehydration. So what's the impact of that on a cat's health?
Well, for one, it puts a lot of strain on their kidneys and bladder, which need a good amount of water to function properly. And cats pointed out how male cats, they're particularly susceptible to urinary tract issues like potentially life-threatening blockages.
So choosing a food with more moisture content isn't just about preference. It's like a proactive way to prevent serious health problems later on.
Exactly. You're getting it.
Okay, this is already blowing my mind, but there's one more debate I have to bring up. The whole carbohydrate controversy. The cat's video really got me thinking, look, yeah, cats can technically digest carbs to some extent, but their bodies evolved on a diet of primarily protein and fat. Is it really a good idea to mess with that formula?
That's the million-dollar question a lot of cat owners are dealing with, and for good reason. The cat's video made an interesting comparison between a cat's blood sugar regulation and how it's similar to that of a diabetic human. It definitely makes you think twice.
It does. So if someone's concerned about too many carbohydrates in their cat's diet, what's the best course of action?
One of the simplest yet most effective things you can do is switch from dry to wet food. Yeah. Naturally, wet food tends to be a lot lower in carbohydrates, simply because it's mostly meat-based. So you're already off to a great start by prioritizing wet food.
Okay, so let's say we found this great wet food that checks all the boxes. High moisture content, low carbs, all that good stuff. How do we figure out how MUCH to actually feed them? I know there are those general guidelines on the back of food bags, but are those really accurate?
That's where things get even trickier. Those feeding guides are really just a very general starting point. But every cat is different. Dr. Lindsay Butzer, DVM, has those really helpful visuals in her video, showing the different portions side by side for the different life stages, like a tiny little kitten versus a full-grown cat, for example. It was cool to see how much those needs can actually change.
Yeah, I was shocked by how much food a kitten actually needs. They're like little furry eating machines. But it makes sense they're growing so fast. So what's the best way to figure out the right amount for your cat?
So all three experts you shared agreed on one super important thing. Ditch their whole one-size-fits-all idea. It's all about understanding this whole body condition scoring thing. Jess Catacles actually had a really clear visual guide for this. And it's not even just about their weight. It's about actually feeling for their ribs, checking for that little tummy tuck.
I have to admit, I've totally been guilty of just using the scale. But those visual guides make it so much more clear. It's okay, I can actually feel if they're carrying a few extra pounds. But here's something I've always kind of struggled with. Even experts seem to have slightly different opinions on feeding guidelines. I noticed some differences between the Jess Catacles and Dr. Lindsay Butzer DVM videos, which honestly left me feeling a bit lost.
Oh, you're not alone at all. It's totally normal to feel overwhelmed. Even vets don't always agree on every little thing. The key takeaway is that there's not like this magic number. It's more about finding a good starting point. Maybe using those guidelines based on your cat's age, how active they are, their lifestyle, and then just paying close attention to their body condition.
So it's more of an ongoing thing, like observation and adjustment, rather than just setting it and forgetting about it.
Exactly. Just ask yourself, are they gaining weight too fast? Are they losing weight when they shouldn't be? Those are your signs to adjust how much you're feeding them. You're becoming an active participant in their health, not just blindly following instructions on a bag.
That's actually really empowering. It makes the whole thing feel less intimidating.
It should. You know your cat best. And by paying attention to what they need, you're giving them a huge advantage in terms of their health and well-being in the long run.
This is why I love doing these deep dives. I learn so much every time. But speaking of challenges, Just Cackles had me cracking up with the whole cats only meow AT humans bit.
It's so true, though. Like, they've totally mastered how to manipulate us, haven't they?
Oh, they really have. But all that constant meowing and begging for food, it might not always be a bad thing. It could be a sign that something's up with what they're eating. Wait, really? I just always figured my cat was trying to con me into giving them dinner early.
Well, remember how we talked about cats evolving to eat, like, multiple small meals throughout the day?
Well, their ancestors weren't exactly like sitting down to a bowl of kibble a couple times a day, right?
Exactly. In the wild, they'd be out hunting and eating these small prey all day long. So that, like, constant begging could actually mean that their food isn't really keeping them full. Maybe they're, missing that natural hunting thing. Or maybe the food just isn't good enough.
So it's not even that they're starving. It's more that they're not getting that, like, satisfied feeling. Oh, it's like when I have a salad for lunch and then I'm hungry again like an hour later.
Yeah, that's a perfect example. And it shows how, like, just giving in to their begging might not actually fix the problem. It's more about, the whole picture. How good the food is, how often you're feeding them, maybe even try to figure out how to, like, mimic their natural way of eating.
Now that you mention it, that cats video did say how indoor cats don't really get enough mental and physical activity, and that can lead to them overeating and, other weird behaviors.
Exactly. What if, instead of just putting down a bowl of food, we made mealtime like a little hunting game for them?
Okay, now we're talking. Like puzzle feeders hidden around the house.
Mhm.
Or maybe even like scattering a few pieces of kibble in a play area. Turn my living room into a feline jungle gym.
I love it. That's the kind of creative thinking that can really make a difference. You're using their natural instincts, and it gives them a mental and physical workout.
Wow.
Plus, it makes mealtime more fun for both of you.
Oh, this has been such an amazing deep dive. I mean, we went from like ancient history all the way to modern mealtime makeovers. Who knew there was so much to learn about cat food?
And it all comes back to that basic understanding of what makes a cat a cat. They're such interesting creatures with such unique needs, and by taking the time to learn about their history and what they need to eat, you're really giving your cat the best chance at a long, healthy, happy life.
Couldn't have said it better myself. So to our listener out there who's now ready to decode those pet food labels and maybe even hide some kibble in a scratching post, you are officially on your way to becoming a cat feeding ninja.
That's right. This has been great. Until next time.